What's up, boys and gals? Our guest today is Kim Nguyen, a film director and screenwriter who worked on movies such as I and Juliet, Two Lovers and a Bear. His 2012 film War Witch was nominated at the Academy Awards for Best International Feature and took home 10 awards at the first Canadian Screen Awards, including Best Picture, Best Director, Best Actress, Best Original Screenplay, and so on. His latest movie, The Hummingbird Project, which came out in 2018, stars Jesse Eisenberg, Alexander Skarsgård, Salma Hayek, and many more. He even directed an episode of Brooklyn Nine-Nine a few months ago. Anyway, a warm welcome to Kim Nguyen. Kim, it's a pleasure having you on the show.
It's a pleasure to be here, Big C.
So, I just want to right away get into one of your most hard-hitting, one of your best-known works, War Witch, which you did in 2012. And just going to say it for the audience, for those who don't know, War Witch is a film that you directed in 2012 about a child soldier forced into civil war in Africa. And this movie was very well received by the critics, very well received by the audience. And I just want to know, where did this idea come from? Because you being a French Canadian director, you're obviously very far away from what's going on in sub-Saharan Africa. So, and then I read somewhere that apparently you worked on this script for 10 years or something like that. So I just want to know, where did this idea for this movie really came from?
I was moved by a story that took place somewhere very different from Africa. It took place in Burma, actually. And initially, it was a story of these two young brothers who were less than 10 years old. And at a certain point, one of the two brothers woke up and said, I'm the reincarnation of Jesus or of God. So I know how we can win against the armies of the government. If you follow my teachings and follow God's voice, we will prevail. And for about many months, I think it was 6 months, they prevailed. They won the battles, and there was something. This character this person became a deity. They wouldn't allow him to touch the ground. He would actually be carried in a basket when they moved from one location to the other. And I just felt there was something crazy and something moving and disturbing about all of those things that were overlapped, that were kind of different realities.
Right.
So I started researching on it, and in the end, it led me to an area where there were more child soldiers, which was in parts of Africa.
Now, what year was this around?
I forget, but it must have been around 2008 or 2009, I think, when I did that research. I was already working on the script before. No, it must have been sooner than that, actually. But somewhere between 2005 and 2010. I don't forget, I don't remember.
Right.
But so then I had a friend who worked for the UN, and he sent me to, he was working as the director of a program for the UN in Burundi. And there I met ex-child soldiers, where it really informed me on the type of script I needed to write. I felt like writing.
So it was due to a friend of a friend, and then that really got you in this whole area of child soldiers. So did you really have a personal connection to this movie when you were...
It's really strange, because sometimes you don't know why things are the way they are. But of all the movies I've written, I felt very connected to the main character, who's a female woman who was at the time like 12 years old. And I just felt connected to what her inner voice was. So what I did was after I did the travel and the research. So I guess in a way, when you're in your best zone, when you're writing, there's something about an actor's work, where you try to put yourself into your character's voices and you don't think about it too much and it just flows. That's like, when you write, the problem is that happens only once a month when you're writing. When you're an actor, you try to reach that zone every day. Yeah. But in our case, it happens not as often, but it's great when it does. So during a day or two, I could feel that voice, and I wrote her inner voice of her thoughts, and that became the through line for the film. And that inner voice is still very similar to that one inspiration I had, at the very beginning of the script.
Now, you wrote this script completely by yourself.
I guess it would be lying to say that we always write scripts by ourselves. It's always, the ex-child soldiers that I've met are part of that story. I've met generals in the Congo that are part of that story. And more recently, I even find that the production designer, who's the one who designs the spaces, when he starts really involved in the script and the preparation, he really informs you on the script. Actually, when we find locations or starts doing the research, sometimes it's the other way around, where the location inspires you how to tweak a scene, and so everybody's part of the writing process. But in effect, I am the central writer.
Yeah. And how long do you think the script took?
It's really hard to say how long a script takes. I could say that all of my scripts take like 10 years to write, but I could also say that all of my scripts take 2 months to write in a way, because there's a whole thinking process that goes in the writing and hearing a story. For example, in the Hummingbird Project, I had heard about high frequency trading, and I had read about these people who were digging tunnels to do fiber optic networks and advantage on the market. Anyways, another long story short, basically that was a long time before I started writing the script. So it all depends on when you decide what is the actual writing process. I believe it's from the moment you have that little flash, and then from the moment when you start putting on the page, it can take many years, or it can take a few months. And then I usually write the first draft quite fast, actually. More and more, I try to write the first draft of a script inside of 6 weeks or 2 months.
So the bulk of your if we compare directing and script writing, so the bulk of the work is really done in the office and then just tweaking every single scene in your head on paper before you actually get it out there.
Yeah, in a way, I would really wish it would be different. I wish that as a director, we were allowed more time to kind of like figure out things while we're in the process, but that's not the case. That's not the case. In a way, a lot of the filming goes on in pre-production when you're thinking about things and discussing, as I mentioned, things with your production designer or with your actors and with your DP. And the filming time has been shrunk so much that when you reach the time of filming, it's really about it's almost about gathering the pieces together. Like you've already built the puzzles, but ideally you fight to keep those moments of just like improvisation, of being in the moment. But you have less of them, much less of them as a director.
And when you mentioned earlier about the main character for the movie, who was a really young teenage girl, like 13, 14, and it says she was literally living on the street of her city before being cast into this movie. Now, is that true?
Yeah, we discovered Rachel Mwanza. We heard about her when there was a docu-fiction. I don't know if that's an English word, but it's like there was a docu-fiction about street kids in the Congo, and we had heard that this was really an amazing actress. And she wasn't actually, she wasn't a trained actress. She was somebody who was living off of the streets of the Congo. And living in the streets of the Congo is really different than living in the streets of Montreal. It's really hard, and for all sorts of reasons. Namely, your immune system has to be made of steel and all of that. So Rachel is really an incarnation of, how do you call it? I'm looking for the word. Sometimes I switch from French to English, but basically,
you can say the French word if you want.
I can't find the French word either. But basically, she's really a symbol of survival and of staying alive and having that yearning to stay alive. I'm sure the word will pop up in my brain.
No worries. There's no rush.
But basically, she just has that strength in her that allowed her to live in the streets, and she had this fearlessness in her that I hope was conveyed on the screen.
And you said she didn't have any formal training in acting before that.
Yeah, she didn't have any formal training. We did have a coach that was on site with us and worked with her for a period of about a month. He worked with a good number of kids that were pre-selected to have a couple of roles in the film.
Now, that actually reminds me of Yalitza Aparicio, the main character who played in Alfonso Cuarón's Roma. Mm-hmm. Have you seen the movie?
Yes, I love that film.
Amazing. So like her, she didn't have any formal training. I read that she was just, I think, a preschool teacher before the movie. And when I saw some, I didn't finish the movie. I'm so sorry, but I saw some clips. I saw Roma. I saw some Warwich, and you really get this level, like kind of like a spontaneity, like authenticity from people who actually don't have training, who aren't professional actors.
It's true. It's actually when you get one of these non-actor actors on set and they're facing actors who have been working, doing auditions for years and years and have a role. And, you know, truth be told, there's not that many roles. It's hard to be an actor. And they're like kind of like analyzing their role, and they intellectualize what it should be and every single word, especially actors who don't have a lot of lines. They're the ones who are the most insecure because they've rethought and reworked their lines. They're 20 lines for the last month. So they're expecting something and they go in it. And then there's this actress who like does funny faces right before I say action. And then she starts crying and being in the moment.
Right.
It's like, it's really scary for an actor. And sometimes it's a moment I love to see that.
Now, was there, so when you're putting with no training with a lot of trained actors, now was there any disconnect, or did everything function quite harmoniously in the end?
I guess there was, you know, it's part of the process. There was some disconnect, but it's not different than with working with any actors. There's a point in time and during the set, during the filming of making of a film, that there's going to be disconnect. I mean,
right.
I'm going to have a disconnect with my DP at a certain point, and that's what, in a way, that's what we're looking for. We're looking for kind of that creative friction that makes us make something better in the end, hopefully. Sometimes not, but most of the times I believe that the creative process is about, a big part of it is about friction. And I find that this is something that I think worries me and a lot of people nowadays, is that just generally speaking, we're less and less looking to have that creative friction and finding a common ground, whether it's in politics or in everything. And I find that we become better human beings when we have opposing forces that kind of like try to find a common ground together. Right.
Now, by creative fiction, you mean that people who definitely don't share the same background, same ideas, and then
it can be there can be like a huge range of disagreement, but it can also be like different points of view that are a little bit similar, but not exactly the same. And you kind of bounce off of each other and find your way. Right. And when actors have different energies, that's great, because it's really, there's a dynamic thing going on. But it's also when you're discussing about how to do a film and how to tell what angle to take on a scene. Also, it's fun when there's people that have like kind of a similar heading, but at the same time they have different angles on the specifics of it.
So, Warwich. So this was the second film done in the Democratic Republic of Congo in the last 25 years, from what I read. Yeah.
I didn't know that. It was an amazing experience, really, the experience of a lifetime to be there. Learned so much from the people there and about with their courage and their fearlessness. And at the same time, it was a challenging place to be in to film.
Because there are still conflicts over there, right? When you were filming the movie.
There was. We couldn't move away too much from the capital, and we were working with armed personnel to protect us
during filming.
Yeah, during filming,
Jeez.
And there was a lot of logistics to make sure that everybody was safe. At one or two points, sometimes you don't plan for some things, and sometimes the security wasn't handled as well as it should have. For one or two points, and I don't want to go into details, but
all right.
It's like you're in close to a military zone, quote unquote. So you got to be careful. And I guess sometimes we weren't aware of the danger, because it doesn't happen until it happens, you know. Right. But at the same time, there was an urgency to live, that we were reminded of this urgency to live by the moment. That was great when we were working with the locals.
Yeah, and because out of all of the places you could be, this was a very risky move wasn't it, to film in the place where you're physically in danger sometimes when filming this movie?
Well, we were I compared three places. I went to Cameroon, which was great. We went to Kenya, and we went to the Congo to decide where we should do the film. And Kenya, truth be told, was much more comfortable as a place. They had safaris, they have staff, they have an experience, they have a big history of doing films there. But there was something about when we would do open calls for casting in Congo. I guess it's the heritage of the verbal tradition, verbal storytelling. I don't know what's the right word, but anyways, there's people tell stories. It's been like for thousands of years, people are going around a circle and the elders are telling stories and it's transmitted. So they're natural actors in the Congo, and it's really amazing. And there's something in that culture about storytelling that's very nurtured. And when we would do open calls of people who weren't actors, about 1 in 10 turned out to be a really good actor, just a naturally good actor. Whereas here in Montreal, it's 1 in 1,000, And in Kenya also, it was a different kind of culture to where it's, sometimes there are cultures. I think that in the past, in my Vietnamese culture, acting was considered something a little off. It's not something that's it was considered not a serious thing in the past. It wasn't something that's serious.
Something more artistic, more on the side,
Yeah, maybe, exactly. And it wasn't necessarily cherished. And it depends on each culture. It's really, and so that they're from one country to the next, like Rwanda to Congo, the relationship to acting and to performing is very, very different. It's very, very different, and you could actually see it from the Burundi to the Congo, how the acting talent was different.
Now, this might sound a little bit irrelevant, but there was you guys were using a lot of prop guns, AK-47s during the movie, and then you had people with real AK-47s.
Yes, that was something that was something very complicated, actually, to bring the guns in, which is normal. Luckily, it was hard to, you hope that it's hard to bring guns into the Congo.
When I read about it, I got scared, because what if they mixed up the guns somehow?
Oh, no, that's like when you go into a shoot with the weapons, it's very, very, very well organized. You got a weapons wrangler and his assistant, and nobody touches a weapon until that guy has validated. Even if he knows it's a fake gun, he still presses on the trigger to make sure.
God.
And there's exactly. And there's a whole process of using. But you think that blank bullets actually are very safe, but they're especially for AK-47s, they're quite dangerous. There's still dust of burning gunpowder that can come off of the gun, and it can hurt somebody. So Jesus. All of that is, I remember at one point there's a story where one of the bigger scenes where we were using AK-47s, about 30 guns were going to pop at the same time, and 30 AK-47s, which is it's very, very loud. I'm naive about guns and I don't use guns, and so I didn't know about that, but they're so loud that just staying 15 seconds next to an AK-47, you can really hurt your ears. That's how loud they are. So we had that thing, but we had to tell the radio and the television people. We had to announce to the population via radio and television that.
Oh, because you're not too far from popular urban areas.
Yeah, exactly.
So people can actually hear.
Yeah, exactly. But even if we're 20 kilometers away, you can hear guns. AK-47s. So we just had to tell the population, listen, you're going to hear guns tomorrow. It's not an attack. It's not a military operation. We're Canadians that are coming to do a film in the middle of the Congo.
That is so Canadian of us.
Yes.
Coming to the middle of the country and then just telling everyone it's just for a movie. It's not real.
Exactly.
I guess we're very lucky to be in that situation.
Yeah.
Now, so this movie you were nominated at the Academy Awards in 2013, I believe. Now, what did you envision this situation before when you were writing for the movie, when you were directing? Did you think that you were going to be nominated?
Not at all. I don't think it's something you anticipate because, anyways, there's so many things that can come into. It's really there are parts of the Academy Awards that there's a part of luck of the draw also. That's okay, the timing is there. Somebody has heard about this film and all of that. and it has to make its way in a couple of months all the way to the awards, and there's like PR people that have to talk about it so that the right people see it. So there's a number of factors that make it that you can't anticipate if you're going to get a nomination or not. But it really helped me in my career. After Warwick, the one thing that I talked to a colleague producer, Robert Lantos, who's pretty well known in Canada, and I asked him, what should I do next? What, you know, to like use this as a lever for my for my career. And he said, well, first things first, ask yourself what are the best actors and the ones that you would like to work with, and then figure out in which agencies they work, and then go to that agency and get represented by that agency. So basically, the industry is very much fashioned by agencies. There's a couple of them you might have heard. I'm at CAA, Creative Artists Agency. There's William Morris. There's UTA, ICM. They all have 3 letters. And these couple of agencies are really influential in getting your movies made or not.
Right.
And so, yeah, a lot of actors I respect a lot are at CAA. And Robert Lantos introduced me to a couple of agents, and we hit it off. And that's my link to getting the privilege of having my scripts read by a couple of actors. It's one of the most important things in film financing is getting your script read by the actors with whom you would like to work with.
Right, and just out of curiosity, because you know I've never been close to that world. What was it like going to the famous Academy Awards? You know, having seen all of the greats in more American cinema, but what was it like for you?
You know David Lynch. You're a little younger than me, but at my time when I started in the movies, David Lynch was like a god.
Oh, right.
So
wasn't he the guy who did Mulholland Drive?
Yes, he did Mulholland Drive. He did Wild at Heart. He did Eraserhead. He did a couple of masterpieces.
Really, a genius.
Yes, a genius, and really a unique voice, still today. So there was something very Lynchian about going to the Academy Awards from the limousine.
Oh, really?
You know, you rent a limousine. It's not like you picked every detail inside of the car. So there's something a little kitsch about the whole scenery inside of the limo. Then you reach a certain point and there's like a gate, and there's like people with sniper rifles around your limousine, and somebody with a mirror who checks under your limo for bombs.
What, really?
Yeah, and we're drinking champagne. And then you get into this, like, you feel like your limousine is like a cow inside of a, of a slaughterhouse. It's like but it's only limos. The cows are limos. And everybody's just waiting.
Did you decide to get a limo, or was it sent by the Academy?
Well, you have to get a limo when you go to the awards.
You have to get a limo.
Well, kind of,
right.
or some other car. But so we were all of the crew inside of that limousine.
Okay.
And we decided to treat ourselves to a limousine. So, but there's like literally hundreds of limousines on a 4-lane road. It's really strange, and everybody's drinking champagne and all that. And you get to the place, and at a certain point,
go ahead.
And so we decided to go really early to be able to walk on the red carpet, and we were the first ones who arrived.
The first ones.
Yes, and that sucks.
That sucks.
Nobody was there.
Nobody was cheering.
Exactly. No, but we wanted to see everybody and all of that. Right. So we were the annoying ones that were like going there and then walking back and then going back, and they were like, okay, sir, you had to move to the next thing. So for colleagues who are nominated for the Academy Awards, don't go first. Don't go early. Go like 45 minutes later.
Fashionably late.
Yes, exactly. And then, one thing that really impressed me was the level of plastic surgery. Yes.
You think?
Yes. It's like you can notice it. There's something very odd, and that's one of the Lynchian things. There were you could see a lot of surgeries that was a little bit over the top. Mm-hmm. And you notice it mostly at the end of the evening. I don't know why, but it was something very, very impressive. Yeah, but that moment, it was just great to be there and walk with the people you respect so much. There was something called the Governor's Luncheon, I think. which is the day before or 2 days before, and that was really the best treat for me. It was like
the government, the governor's lunch.
The governor's lunch, I think.
Governor's ball? No, that's the
No, I
music
don't think
festival.
so. And there's like a lunch of all the nominees,
Right.
like 2 days before, and I'm sorry, I forget the name of the actual event. And in a way, that's like the most fun. You're sitting around tables, and you're sitting with people you respect a lot, and you're just doing jokes and having fun. And you have that big picture with all of the. My picture was being taken next to. I had Robert De Niro, like one aisle down, and then Steven Spielberg, like 2 aisles down. It was like, yes, that's really cool.
Did anybody make an impression on you?
Michael Mann was really a gentleman, and we had a great chat about movie making.
Right.
Yeah, definitely.
I'm not familiar with Michael Mann.
Michael Mann did one of his best films, if not his best films, is The Insider, with Al Pacino, about the corruption in the smoking industry. A great film.
Right.
And he did a number of other films that are really good. I think, yeah.
So after going the Academy Awards, did it affect your mindset in any way? Like it made you look at filmmaking in a different way, look at cinema in a different way, how you approach your movies?
Not specifically going to the awards, but that's one thing that you wish that would settle in your heart and in your brain, but never does. It's just that quest for what makes a good story. It's from movie to movie, it's still the same question, and it's if you feel that you've nailed it too much and you're doing you're doing a recipe, and if you're not committing to a certain genre or a certain tone, then it becomes a little offbeat. So it's really in the moment that you settle these things about tone and consistency of your voice. It's a never-ending question for me.
What I feel kind of interesting about the Oscars is it's really American festival, really, and then you have all the best international feature films, and then last year you had Parasite, which I think was so good that they had to make it win Best Picture.
Yeah.
And not only Best, because usually there's almost little to no international movies winning Best Picture, I think.
Roma was 2 years ago or 1 year ago? I get mixed up. I make it confused.
I think it was 2 years ago.
2 years ago.
I think it was The Green Book. I'm not sure.
Okay.
I might get it mixed up.
Okay.
Did you see? You definitely saw Parasite.
Yeah, I loved it. So well filmed. Absolutely. Great acting.
What are some of your biggest inspirations or your favorite people that you look up to in cinema?
Well, still living and still very active.
Either way.
Yeah, I have tremendous respect for P.T. Anderson. I find that no matter if people say that this film is better, this film is not as good, every single film has a voice. You recognize his own voice, and you also recognize something unique about his films. And he has a constant winning streak in all of his films. For other reasons, I really admire Jonathan Glazer's work.
Jonathan Glazer.
Yeah, Jonathan Glazer. Let me just make sure.
Go ahead.
Give you a list of his films. And the work he did with this amazing cinematographer that died called Harris Savides, who is one of the... He's not recognized enough, I find, for the work that he done.
What's his name again?
Harris Savides.
Harris Savides.
Yeah. So Jonathan Glazer did, of course, Under the Skin. He did this very interesting film called Birth. He did mostly for these two films. They're just two films, but I find that they have something very unique about them and a unique voice. I've analyzed and rewatched so many films from Coppola. I really admire his earlier work and The Godfather, the original version of Apocalypse Now. I personally thought that there was something called Apocalypse Now. I think it's called Redux. It's the longer version that he re-edited a couple of years ago, and I thought that the movie was not as good as the original.
Why did he do that?
I think that he thought that I think he says that he filmed a lot of material that he thought was missing in the film because it was such good material, and at the time he was he was questioning himself a lot, and he thought that the scenes that he took out deserved more recognition, so he brought them back.
Right.
But it's weird because the mystery behind the character is kind of destroyed by some of the scenes where the character is more revealed. So I kept a DVD of the original Apocalypse Now, which I find is far superior. And one of his earlier films called The Conversation, you should watch it.
The Conversation. I'll note it down.
It's a film that it's endless. Even today, it's just as interesting as many years ago. Yeah.
Any other recommendations you would want to suggest?
Oh, you know what? I'm going to open my rental thing and tell you because I have such a horrible memory. But look, there's so many good movies that have been done in the world.
How many times more movies do you think you've watched than the normal person?
I don't think I'm a big movie watcher. I rewatch a lot of the films that I've enjoyed and study those a lot. Yeah. I've rewatched Fellini's 8.5. I think it ages so well. I think it's so interesting. Mm-hmm. There's a French film called With a Friend Like Harry. They're not necessarily my favorite films, but I'm just mentioning because I think that they're great.
Right.
In French, it's Harry, un ami qui vous veut du bien. There's an amazing, strange film that is I don't want to mix up which country.
There's no rush.
It's called The Untamed. The Untamed by Amat Escalante. Amazing film, strange, amazing film.
For those who are listening, I'm going to link it down in the description so just everyone can click on it.
Great. Can I keep going?
Go ahead.
Okay, cool. Because there's a lot I'd love to share. There Will Be Blood, obviously. Great film.
I think it was named the best movie in the last decade by a lot of people.
Oh, I would agree. Taxi Driver Never Ages by Scorsese.
I'm having a blank memory of my favorite movies.
Yeah?
Yeah, I'm really...
a film, I think there's a Coen Brothers film that's been underrated. I could name I would say all of the Coen Brothers films, but A Serious Man, I find, has been underrated.
A Serious Man.
Yeah, A Serious Man, I think, is a great film. There's I think it's an Argentinian film called Rojo, R-O-J-O. Did I stop?
No, go ahead. We have plenty of time.
Okay.
There's a lot. The thing is, cinema. You think there's a lot of good movies, and then you look at the international side, and then you get even times and times and more good movies to watch.
Yeah. I thought Personal Shopper by Olivier Assayas was very interesting.
Mm-hmm. What kind of genre do you more look into?
I like, for No Country for Old Men, for example, for me is just as much a masterpiece as There Will Be Blood. And it's weird because the two movies came together at the same time. Mm-hmm. It's when you talk about something that's anchored in truth, but at a certain point there's a character that's so overwhelming or beyond what you're expecting that they reach something the film reaches a state of the ultimate metaphor, something like a Greek tragedy, but
right.
It's still anchored in real truths, and the elements that make it unique are still grounded in something that could happen in real life. I think that's a balance that's great. For those who haven't
movies
seen,
usually age very well.
Yeah,
because it's fundamental truth that will always be true when you resonate with you when you watch it.
Absolutely. For those who haven't seen Cronenberg's Naked Lunch, that's a great adventure. I love Moonlight. Moonlight is great. Mm-hmm. Very dark, haunting piece. It's called Monos. Monos. It's a very courageous film by a director called Alejandro Landes. Mm-hmm. South America is doing amazing films from all parts of the continent. So yeah, I see Miss Bala, Midnight Family. There are a lot of movies from South America.
They're
Lost in Translation, loved it. The Lighthouse was great. There's
really?
Yeah,
I've been wanting to see that. I've been wanting to because
cool.
it looks so unique as a film.
Stylistically very, very interesting.
Yeah.
And there's a Russian film that I think it won, or at least it was nominated for Academy Award. It's called Leviathan by a very known director, Andrei Zviagintsev. And I'll give you last one, an old one.
Go ahead.
La Ventura by Antonioni. So that's enough, I guess. I'm going to bore people.
I'm going to look into all of these. I'm going to look into all of these after this anyway. So when you approach filmmaking, because some directors look at it more as characters, as storytelling, as visuals. What do you think you look for the most in a good piece of cinema?
I don't know anymore. I don't think the most important for me is although when you craft the thing, you have to tie yourself to some structures and some tools of storytelling.
Yeah.
But in the end, I think that it can be a number of things. You see 8.5 by Fellini, and there's not necessarily. It's a very personal film. I guess in that case, it's because it's very personal and linked to his own life. But at the same time, it's conveyed in a unique way, and a very personal voice. There's a similar reason why there's this movie called Holy Motors by filmmaker Leos Carax, and I loved also his film called Lovers on the Bridge, I think. And it's a unique voice and very strong characters that makes me want to see it. So I guess, and the heart of it, I think that what can make a great script really work or fail is if you don't cast the right actors for them and you don't give them space to be authentic and true and bold and reach that range. What was your question again?
Which elements of filmmaking do you value the most? Is it more, sometimes more characterization, character arcs, the general, like the thing it talks about, the topics, the question it reviews in the modern society? Now, do you really have an approach to this, or it really changes everything?
I don't know. I'm sure that there are themes that come back over and over. I think that you can't escape your tastes. But for me, the hardest part and still what is still driving me to try to make films is finding that balance where everything connects together and there's synergy. And it's kind of like when you play guitar, there's harmonics, and you're trying to find a perfect chord. To me, a good film is like a swelling chord that sometimes there's some things that are off and you wonder why, but it makes sense in the ensemble of things.
Right. I suppose you don't watch a lot of animation, do you?
I should watch more, but I think Princess Mononoke, is a masterpiece. I think
all the Studio Ghibli's, all the Hayao Miyazaki, I think every time he just nails the story, how consistent it is, how it also connects to the real world, the real people, and then I think he is really the best in animation I've ever seen, and so consistently good.
Yeah, absolutely.
So what are you working on now?
I'm working on a number of things. It's really hard because with the COVID, we don't know when we're going to be able to film again, and we don't know what are the best films to write. I was thinking maybe the best thing is to write a film that is like a huis clos, like with just like a couple of characters in one single space. But in the end, I think that the producers are looking for bigger projects in a way because they're going to be able to work only on one project instead of 3 of them, or on 3 projects instead of 10 of them. So they want to make it worth their while, and they want to do something that's
more commercial.
Well, not necessarily more commercial, but something that's going to make it worth their while. I'm sure there's money involved in that because it's a bigger budget, but also just like involving themselves in something big that they believe in because they're going to be able to do much less projects because of the logistics and the financing aspect of it. So I don't know what projects I should do, but I'm working on 2 miniseries, which I love that format. A closed miniseries where there's a beginning, middle, and end in 4 or 6 episodes. I love this concept. There's been really, really good ones that have been done recently. And I purchased the rights to do a very strong story that's set in early 20th century, but I can't mention the name of the
Fair
novel,
enough.
But it'll be announced probably in a couple of weeks.
Exciting times. So I'm guessing you can't really do a lot of direct from home, so it's a lot of script writing in these times.
Yeah, I mean, I'm hearing how people are doing filming right now, and how sometimes, even the actors, you have to try to keep them apart as long as possible. So they just sometimes you have a lot of shots that they're not facing each other, even if they're acting together, because to prevent the least physical contact.
So they're changing literally scenes to avoid COVID?
Well, not necessarily, but if you have like a wide shot where two actors are talking, that's fine. You film that. Yeah. But when you're going to the close-ups, I love to have the other actor next to the camera so that the actor on camera is actually speaking to a real person. It makes a huge difference for most actors. But then, in this case, you would most likely take the actor out so that they're not facing each other. Well, we're still doing the same shot. Right? This is the camera, the actor, and the other actor is behind the camera, but it's just so that this actor has a humanized to him.
Oh, okay.
But in our case, we'll take out the actor in this, what's going on right now. And sometimes actors, there's different, it's so complex. There's some actors that are in isolation for 14 days. So they're, all of the actors that have this, green bracelet can talk to each other, whatever they want. But then there's sometimes actors that come in on set for only 3 days of filming. They can't, we can't afford to put them, and they can't afford to be 2 weeks out of work. So in that case, they have, I think, 15 minutes per day. They are allowed to be within 1 meter of another actor for not more than 15 minutes. So that, that's insane.
Just a lot of logistics, Yeah,
so I'm hoping that late spring, I don't feel that's going to happen anytime in 2020, but hopefully mid-spring, later spring, there's going to be more openness to just having characters being able to hug and kiss each other if the scene says that they have to hug and kiss each other.
No, totally.
Yeah, or else we're all going to make films about people in the middle of the pandemic who keep their isolation. Which
I think there's going to be a wave of arts and cinema and poetry about this isolation period.
Yeah, I think we're going to be so sick of it at a certain point. We're going to need that one that's going to pop out and it's going to last. It's going to be full for 50 years. And then the other ones, we're just going to, we're not watching a pandemic.
No, we don't want to be reminded of this period 20 times a day over.
Yeah.
Now, if we look at your childhood, if we look at your younger days, did anything really stand out in pushing you into going into filmmaking? Or did it just emerge sometimes out of nowhere?
Well, I was I did need a lot of attention when I was a kid. That's for sure.
Good for you.
And then maybe you're an insecure kid who needs attention. That was me. But one thing I do remember is I always loved to write stories and write songs. And I also remember getting being completely hooked. But as soon as I started doing black and white photography and developing them, I could spend hours on end in a lab exposing pictures and seeing them, reveal themselves inside of the chemicals, which was probably bad for my health. But I just from that point on, I think that the two kind of mix together, the yearning to capture images and to tell stories.
And eventually that led to, video making.
Yeah, putting them together. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Putting them together.
And how was your studies?
I studied at Brebeuf College in communications, and then I went to Concordia University, which in a way I'm quite happy that it was that way. At the time, the program wasn't as structured as it is today. Mm-hmm. So we were left a lot of freedom to do bad films.
Oh, right.
And we were still, it was just the end of filming with 16 millimeter film stock.
Yeah.
And cutting real film literally with scissors and splicing them together with tape. And we were just like, it was like most professional films were being edited digitally, but it was too costly for a...
Right.
So I touched both mediums. And then I taught part-time film language and photography. I think I taught it a year at Brébeuf, actually.
Oh, yeah.
A couple of courses, yeah.
What did you teach in exactly?
I taught photography and filmmaking.
Oh, that's great. So what were some of the challenges when you were starting out your career?
I think that in a way, when I started, things were a little easier than today. Now there's a lot of, I will call it noise. Okay, I'll give you an example. For example, maybe 20 years ago, a film festival would get maybe 1,000 feature films.
Yeah.
And would select, a well-known festival would get about 1,000 films and would select them select. Now, that same festival gets about 5, 6, or 7,000 films.
Jeez.
That's so many films to watch.
Right.
And every film selector I've asked that question has answered the same thing. Let's say with 1,000 films, there were 20 films that were very good and 3 that were great. Out of the 5,000 or 6,000 films, there's still only 20 or 30 that are good, that are very good, and 2 or 3 that are great. So that's very interesting.
Right.
So I guess that because of the access to the technology is much easier now. People do more films, but they're not necessarily a bigger number of good films.
Quality,
Maybe there's a little bit more, but not necessarily a huge amount.
So the quantity has shot up, but the quality didn't necessarily catch up.
Exactly. Yeah. I don't think it won't. I don't think it ever will. I don't think maybe it's just that it's not made to, I think that in any medium, whether it's literature or painting or film, I don't think it's meant to be, it is meant to like have 40 masterpieces that pop up. It's just like I think that maybe our collective minds are not made to bring more than one masterpiece of a film every year or every 5 years or so. That's my take on it.
Yeah, so maybe the quality of all of them have shot up, but it's harder for the good ones to really shine through.
But maybe there's a lot. Yeah, and maybe there's a number of films that are lesser quality also. I don't know, because there's so many that people are just like films. And I'm sure that it brought up a couple of amazing films that we couldn't have done in the past because of now there's like really a democracy of access to the format. So but all that to say, it does mean that there's about 8 or 10 times more filmmakers than there were when I started, and there was already a big contingent, it was already overcrowded, but now it's much more overcrowded. So the one thing I find over the years, the special weapon, I would say, is that most people hate writing.
Script writing.
Yeah, most people don't like it. They say they have a story, they write it, but in the end, it's like it's a struggle and they don't like the process. Most of my friends were there for directing and for the image, and when they start writing, like they get a headache and they never get their scripts done. So
that's like the long, tedious part. That's the grind in a way.
Yeah, and in a way, and if you love that, and if you can develop a love for the storytelling, that's going to be the secret weapon. Because no matter how the media see, like today, we're going into television. There's a lot more miniseries, and it looks like the classic feature film is transforming. I don't know how.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't know in which way. I don't know if there's going to be, but definitely, if you are a storyteller, you can migrate definitely from doing feature films to writing stories. I guess the same can be said for being a director, also transitioning. But there's always a lack of good stories, I find. There's always the demand for great scripts. Great scripts are usually recognized.
And now, when you look back at your entire career, what do you wish you had known when you were starting out?
That's so interesting. Keeping that inner voice, that little instinct, I wish I could send you. There was a quote from Spielberg, actually, that I related, and I'm going to quote him because I find that so true. It's at a certain point, you have your inner voice, and your inner voice, he says, it's not something big and loud. It's something very tiny, and you have to listen for it. And once you feel that you get a hook for it, it's almost like quantum physics. When you touch it, it transforms, and you have to remind yourself of how it was before. So it's kind of like that. When you find something that your instinct has told you, hold on to it and write it down and remind yourself of that, because it's frail and it's underneath the rumble, and it's not something loud and clear. When you recognize it and you amplify it in your brain, then you can make it. It's your job to make it clearer afterwards. So
go ahead.
I guess that's the one thing that's the hardest, because also sometimes that tiny voice can be the wrong thing. You thought it was the instinct that had the perfect answer, but it wasn't.
Now, when you're talking about this inner voice, is it more like a perspective into going at a certain subject, or it's how you position yourself amongst all the filmmakers in the world?
It's more about what the film you're doing in the process deserves to get done, and it's at every step of art direction, screenwriting, directing actors, getting the right shot, and a lot of it listening to your instincts when actors are doing performances and you're trying to find the right tone also.
Mm-hmm. Now, so after War Witch, which was in 2012, you went on and did a documentary on the nose.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
What was that about?
Well, I'm a foodie and I love good wine also.
Right.
And it was a colleague who told me, listen, we're doing a film about food and sense of smell. And I'm not sure it was about the sense of smell initially, but I could see Netflix was already on it for doing amazing documentaries about food.
Right.
And I felt that there needed some kind of like postmodern angle on whatever subject that delved a little bit on the food aspect. I didn't want to do like a kitchen show with huge, beautiful close-ups of the food boiling, because it's been done so well already.
There's so many of them already.
Yeah. But what is the best one that they did 4 years of it, Netflix?
Chef's Table?
It's Chef's Table, yeah. For me, Chef's Table, it's really, since Chef's Table's been done, I can't think of any show that I've seen that
really stood out as much as, absolutely agree.
Yeah. And it's like castrating as a filmmaker when you want to, anytime I've been asked a couple of times after I did that thing on the sense of smell, to do something that revolves around food. And I always go back to all of those episodes that have been done on Chef's Table. They're just amazing.
Now, so what did you do for it's French, right? It's a French documentary.
Yeah, it's called, so what I did is it's a study on the relationship between the brain, our sense of smell, and our relationship to our connection to the world. Mm-hmm. And it's amazing how during that documentary, I realized how our emotional response to the world is linked to the sense of smell. It's really, really amazing. I didn't realize it, but it's really something that's been studied in the brain, that if you don't lose your sense of smell, you lose so much connection to the world on an emotional side.
Now, what do you mean by this emotional link? Like when you smell a certain thing, it comes up with associations?
We'll have to ask the doctor and I'll have to watch the documentary again, but basically the triggers associated with the smell are much more primal than what your eyes reflect, or the taste. Actually, taste is 80 or 90% smell. Actually, that's one thing.
Oh wow!
But yeah, hearing also. There's the brain does a lot of processing when you hear and see, whereas the sense of smell is there's the sensors and it's plugged into the brain, and immediately you get that emotion. and it's much more potent than what we think it actually is.
That's really, so did you travel the world and
Yeah,
you
it was one
discovered a
of
lot of
my,
food, I guess, yeah?
yeah, it was one of my most amazing trips for films, and it wasn't planned out to be that way, but we went to Morocco and met with families. We went in
Oh,
like
wow.
a secluded area in the mountains of Morocco and met saffron pickers because they had to pick them hand by hand, one by one
Mm.
with their hands, and it was an amazing process. Then we went to uh, northwestern Italy where we discovered the truffle, and
Oh man, that
we
must have
went.
been
Yeah, that was
amazing,
great.
yeah.
That was great. So yeah, all of these things we went not around the world, but we went north of Africa and in Northern Africa and in Europe, did a couple of
Hmm.
spots. But it was an amazing time. We had a lot of fun.
That sounds absolutely like, I mean, going around the world, smell, it's a lot of like the basic pleasures of, living and to interact with these food.
Yeah.
Um,
How can you say
so
no?
how
You
can you
get
say
asked.
no, right?
Exactly. It was already financed. She said we're going to go around the world, discover some things about smell and food. What do you say? I said yes before even listening to the details of it.
So your last movie that you've done was the Hummingbird Project, right? That was in
Yes.
2018, I believe.
Uh-huh.
Now, what was it? How was it different in a way to work? Because with the Hummingbird Project, you work with some of the bigger names in Hollywood. I think you had Jesse Eisenberg, Alexander Skarsgård, Salma Hayek. What was if you compare it to Warwich, which was like local regional people with little to no acting experience. Now you're dealing with experienced actors and very well recognized people in Hollywood. Now, what would you say are the main differences between when you're working at these two movies?
Well, there's one thing that you kind of realize that I realized as I went on, and you work with somebody who were like Rachel Mwanza for Warwich, and you work with actors like Jesse Eisenberg, or I must say one of the best actresses I've worked with ever is Tatiana Maslany, also in a film I worked on called Two Lovers and a Bear.
Hmm.
And you realize that fearlessness, all of the work and all of the talent that makes those great actors who they are, is that they kept a lot of their fearlessness. And for whatever Jesse Eisenberg, who he's one of the greatest persons I've met in the business, by the way, he's such a great person.
Oh yeah.
And he has that fearlessness also, and he has he believes in the way he's going to do work on his role. And Alexander also, they want to go all the way when they decide to do a character. So that's kind of the thing that's similar. Then what's different is all of the infrastructure required when working with world-renowned actors. No matter what, there's no way around it. You got to have all of the supporting elements.
Right.
Unless, apart from some rare cases, usually you need to have all of that supporting structure to do. So it just becomes bigger, and there's a little bit more complexity in preparing for the film, just because of those international actors. And it's not necessarily something that the actors ask of. It's just like the nature of the business.
Right.
So that's one thing that's hopefully what you try to do is make sure that all of this complex organization of shutting down streets to put all of the trailers
Yeah.
stays transparent. Is like invisible when you're on set and around set. That when it works well, that's the way it works. It's just more comfort to do the work you have to do on set.
And what do you think are the important qualities? Because now you're dealing with a lot of people. You're dealing with a lot of things at once. What do you think are the important qualities for you as a filmmaker in what you're in your field?
I don't know. There's definitely fearlessness. You got to dive into it. There's something about anticipation. I can't define it exactly, but there's something about anticipation. You're doing your scene, and you're gonna be in the moment, of course, and listen to what's happening. But you also got to kind of like sort of anticipate what could go wrong, and how to finish your day, but at the same time connecting to the voice of the film and as I mentioned, your inner voice. There's something about multitasking, but at the same time being able to focus on what is happening here and now. That's like, it's hard to define, but when you're filming, there's a lot of things that need to get to be right. You kind of got to be playing many instruments at the same time.
Yeah. And especially when you're leading big projects like this, and as a director, I think you're really in a leadership position, or dealing with teams and working with so many different producers, stage directors, makeup artists.
Yeah.
So you would qualify yourself as more of a leader in this case?
Yeah, I hope. I guess, yeah, the position I have is a position of authority, definitely. And I have to kind of like, my job is to make sure that I can allow enough space for all of my creative team to bring in their own voice.
Yeah.
But at the same time, channel it in the single vision and make it look like something that ties together and has, that has its character and has its own person in a way. It's a living object that exists on its own and that makes sense.
So it's to allow everybody on the team to be, because a lot of them are creative personnel. So you want to really give them room to exercise their own thinking, but while also maintaining the same vision for the entire project. Yeah,
there's something about organized chaos, ideally, but organized chaos in a good way, whereas like everybody's kind of a little firework, a little explosion, but you guide it that it makes like one nice drawing, but there are elements of life that are there that you can't plan for, and it's great when some things happen that you didn't plan for. I find that it's great if you can prepare a little bit of space for that life to happen when you're filming.
And speaking of, you mentioned fearlessness as one of the really important qualities. And I looked at some of your past work, and I see you as a very adventurous guy. I mean, Warwitch, that was in sub-Saharan Africa, and Two Lovers and a Bear, that was in kind of like the Arctic climate, right? And then another one called Eye on Juliet. Now, was that actually filmed in the Middle East?
It was filmed in the central Morocco.
Yeah, and then so I guess you really like to venture out in these interesting kind of more like non-everyday locations.
Yeah, well, yeah, I guess it's about, in my case, I think it's about trying to find a different take on our world, a different perspective on our world that'll make it worth your while when you're coming to see the film, to see a different angle on life. And there's so many directors that filmed the urban setting I live in that I find that sometimes I need to go elsewhere to find something unique and that's, that justifies me making a film, I guess. Maybe it's not necessarily the right way to go at it, but it's the way I guess it's what I've been doing in the last couple of years.
Which one of your work do you hold on the most? Do you think when you look back at this is the one that I keep with me whenever I go away?
Well, I can't, these are all my babies.
Yeah.
And I love, every film, there's something I like. And I've made a lot of mistakes also in different films. Of course, Warwitch is the one film, I think, for me, Warwitch is still the film I find is the most accomplished. But I also find that Eye on Juliet is for me, it's the film that I wanted to do. And I'm a little sad about the reception of Eye on Juliet, because to me, it wasn't like a social cinema verite take on Northern Africa or whatever. To me, it was an exploration on solitude, from different perspectives in the world, and how the human relationship to technology. And most critics, having watched Warwich, watched Eye on Juliet.
So they had high standards.
Angle. Yeah. Well, they had different expectations for what the film should be. They should have high standards, so when the film came out, we had a horrible review from both Variety and I think the Hollywood, like one after the other. And I thought, oh my God, did I do a horrible film? But I wondered. And then I had this interview from a little screenwriting magazine from Poland. They said, well, it's pretty clear your film's the best film of the festival. And I was like shocked. I was like, what? And they told me, I don't see how we could We didn't see any film that came close to your vision.
Wow.
I'm just sharing this because it's so, but it was too late because Hollywood Reporter and Variety. And then I leave Venice. It was playing at Venice Days, and we win Best Film from a European Critics Association. And it's like, but it's too bad. I feel that the film did get a chance for the people who could appreciate the film in the angle that I saw it in to watch it. And I'm very proud of that.
There was a difference in the backgrounds of these critics. I mean, some of them really did enjoy it. Some of them really didn't, and the European guys really loved it apparently.
Yeah, and most people, truth be told, a majority of people didn't like that film. But it's the one film I can say I find it's interesting for our conversation. That is the one film that I still love it, and I'm still proud of what the actors and the film language that we used to tell the story. I'm still proud for what we achieved in that sense. And yeah.
What do you think was the disconnect? What do you think the critics saw that made it unappreciable for them?
Well, I don't know. I think it's, sometimes you wonder if you should pitch them what the film is exactly before they watch it. I do find that there's a problem with film festivals nowadays, that there's a race to get the first review out. And there's so many films to watch. So sometimes, it's not a figure of speech. Reviewers have 30 minutes to watch a film. So they have to write
30 minutes. Okay.
Sometimes they rush. They want to get it out first, and then they have to go to the next movie. Their work conditions during major film festivals are many times not the best of them. I was in Hollywood once, and there was this reporter. All of a sudden, he had to hold his own camera, film himself, and hold the microphone and do an interview, and stop people from walking through the shot. And so, and he was a writer. He wasn't even the camera.
He was
exactly. He didn't know how that camera
his job.
worked. Exactly, it wasn't his job. I think that the press realized that they reached just kind of a point where they can't do that anymore. But at the time, it was free, more of a free for all. Maybe it still is like this. So, anyways, I think that I think that reviewers in film festivals we don't give them enough time. In a way, they should give their review a week after. See all the films.
Let it sleep on.
Let it sleep. Maybe watch one or two that they're suspicious about.
Right. No, I agree, because in that case, it's first impressions, and first impression isn't always the right impression. Selon moi, en tout cas. Yeah. And this is a quality that I see in these more artistic people, that you have to take a lot of criticism, and some of the criticism are really harsh.
Yeah, you kind of learn. I'm not affected by reviews anymore, apart from the fact that they influence sales. But on a personal level, I know that my family and my in-laws get much more pissed off than I do about bad reviews or bad articles or bad coverage. They're I'm very protected. I've got a lot of pit bulls I'm moved by that they do that they protect me. But you just got to learn to. And truth be told, there's some, when the person, you feel that it's not when you feel that they really put their time into it, I feel that reviewers should put more time into films that they didn't like. But I've seen other reviews by Variety again and Hollywood Reporter where they didn't really like my film. And I learned a lot from that, because they really took their time to analyze the film and say, what they like, what they didn't like. And it was really interesting for the learning process.
I wonder if it's ever going to be a thing where you re-review the movie, as you said, a week or a month after you saw it, to see how it really ages. Because I agree, a lot of the criticism, they don't always apply if you let the film sit in your head for a while. That's what I thought about Mulholland Drive when I saw it.
Interesting.
I think like a lot of people, after I saw the movie, I was like, what the fuck did I just watch? And then I read a bit about it. I learned more about David Lynch, and then the movie Mulholland Drive was structured as a dream. And then everything connected in my brain. I was just blown away.
It's true. Interesting. Most of David Lynch's work. Sorry, go ahead.
No, you go ahead.
No, most of David Lynch's films are based on dream structure.
Yeah, because I read a bit on dreams before that, no correlation there. And then when I read online that it was structured like a dream, and then every little dot connected, and then this movie was a masterpiece. It was so well thought through. But at first glance, I didn't catch that. So, and if I was a critic, I might have given a bad review, and that would have affected a lot of the movie, not only in sales, but like as in legacy even for the director himself.
True.
Also, I want to ask you, where do you see yourself as a filmmaker at the end of your career? Supposing that you're still going to be making films, unless you're considering making a switch, but where do you see yourself at the end?
You know what? Sometimes I feel like doing just like trying to do like 2 really cool big projects that I take 5 years to do, and then see where I'm at from there, and just write stories or feel something. You do feel sometimes the pressure of doing stories and financing films. It's a tough business, but at the same time, I love it. I love screenwriting. I can imagine myself writing more films and doing less of them, but I'm realizing at the same time that it's hard to like find a director attached to a story that you are writing. Yeah. And that they're really ready to commit to it for like many years. It's not an easy task. So yeah, I think I don't see myself doing like 20 projects. Obviously, time goes by. I would love to focus on a couple of projects that I believe strongly in, where I'm trying to really give myself more time to make them. So that means maybe 4 or 5 projects, and then we'll see where we're at from there.
Speaking of people who take their time, so Hayao Miyazaki, the Ghibli guy, so he's like 80 something, and
amazing.
He came out of retirement, and he's making one last movie for his like grandson, I think, and that's he's great. at this pace, he's doing 1 minute of animation per month for a full-length movie. Wow, that's something. So this is like...
But he's drawing it himself?
I'm pretty sure... He has a whole studio of people working for him, but I'm pretty sure they're hand-drawing everything.
Wow. Yeah, sometimes if he's the lead animator, he does like the keyframes, and then the other drawers are drawing.
Yeah, they fill it up, stuff like that.
Wow, that's so amazing. I'm going to read up on that. Do you know the title of the film?
I think it's How Do You Live, or How Will You Live.
Okay.
Anyway, it's highly anticipated. And so we're kind of running out of time here. So I have one last question I want to ask you. So we talk a lot about people's success stories on this show, but we all know that success isn't representative of, a career necessarily. So I want to know, what are some of your biggest failures or setbacks that you've encountered in these last couple of decades of your career?
Well, generally speaking, I find that some of my films, I would have liked to have more time and being more aware of how people perceive tone and, the unicity of a film up front. And because sometimes I had to fix things, after having done them, after having filmed them. Right. And I didn't have enough of foresight to discover these things, instead of discovering these things later on, kind of like know and put myself more into the spectator's eye of making films right from the get-go, as if I was myself my own spectator and watching the film.
Right.
And that's something I've found that I find I should make a film as a director, I find that I shouldn't make a film to please myself as a director, but to please myself as a spectator watching that film.
Okay.
So that's kind of something that is about foresight, I guess. Yeah.
Well, Kim, it was a pleasure having you here on the show, and I'd just like to thank you for your time, but also your contribution to Canadian or Quebec cinema. I think it is absolutely great, the work that you've done, and I'm really excited to see more.
Thank you, Mingxi. Thank you for having me.
Thank you all for tuning in. I really enjoyed this conversation, and you can follow us on Instagram at The Visionaires. You can also email us at thevisionairespodcast@gmail.com. Whether you want to come on the show or you simply want to chat, feel free to say hi. And tell your friends about us, and we'll tell your friends about you. Ciao, ciao.